Percy Bysshe Shelley's poem Ozymandias is ultimately a poem about time, and how no one can overcome its immutable flow. No matter how great, no matter how powerful, everyone succumbs to the advance of time. Shelley accomplishes this by building up an image of Ozymandias and then shattering that image at the end. The poem starts, I met a traveler from an antique land. Now, this immediately complicates things. This poem is built around the image of this giant statue. It's a sort of visual image. But our narrator has never seen it. He's only hearing the description from this traveler. So we, as the reader, are forced to trust our narrator's opinion about what he's seeing, just like the narrator is forced to trust what he's hearing. So we don't actually have the truest picture of what's out there. We just sort of have this facsimile made out of of words. The real problem this multiple levels of narration causes for us, though, is that we can't be sure how much the narrator is over romanticizing what he's heard from this traveler. And we know that the narrator is prone to romanticizing, not just because it's a romantic poem by a romantic poet, but because right there in the poem we have this immediate romanticizing of the traveler. The word antique. Why use the word antique? The traveler's not from Egypt or Turkey or some other specific place that gives us information. He's from an antique land. And the immediate connection might be antique and antiquity, which would suggest that he's from Greece or Egypt or one of those areas that used to house some sort of ancient civilization. But what this also does is make the traveler an icon. He is an object like the statue of Ozymandias. He is a novelty. He's an exotic foreign thing. Of course, this romantic image is also what gives the poem its potential power. So we know the statue's size. We know of the two vast and trunkless legs of stone that stand in the desert. But near them a shattered visage lies, half sunk, with a frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. So we get this image of Ozymandias as someone who mocked and fed, given how prosperous his kingdom seemed to be. Obviously, he did do good things for his people, even if he was a cruel and stern ruler. But this also creates another complication, because it's the sculptor who has mocked up an image. And then, of course, there's the creative input of Ozymandias himself. Ozymandias obviously commissioned this statue. Ozymandias had to approve the statue, unless perhaps he was dead before it was finished, but there's no indication of that in the poem. So we sort of have to work on the assumption that perhaps Ozymandias chose to show this side of himself. So we've already got a picture of Ozymandias who might have a little too much pride in himself, what we call hubris. But what really seals the deal is the inscription at the base of the monument. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. He has described himself as the King of Kings. Now that's got a lot of biblical allusion in it. Jesus is the King of Kings. So what Ozymandias is doing by having this on his monument is saying, I am a god, essentially. He provides for his people. He has built a kingdom that once surrounded this statue, but he's someone to be feared also, someone to be worshipped. And so Shelley has built this picture of the proud and boastful Ozymandias with all his hubris, and then he brings in the final image of the poem. The last three lines of the poem say, nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So it's this image that really brings the message of the poem home. That Ozymandias, despite all his power, despite all his greatness, despite all his pride, despite his efforts to preserve himself, has been overwhelmed by time. His kingdom is gone, his statue is a wreck, his name is unremembered. Perhaps more importantly, though, Ozymandias' people are gone as well. They too have been overwhelmed by time. They too are gone. The work they did in the kingdom is lost forever. And they don't even get a mention on the statue. So history has recorded the name of Ozymandias, not because of his great works, but to remind us that all people will succumb to the immutable flow of time.